SDG podcast. Today we're here at the Podcasters. Say hello and introduce yourselves, if you would be so kind.
Hello, I'm Chad.
Hi, I'm Peter Lawrence.
And hi, I'm Claire.
And I'm Kyle Bacher, and today we're going to talk about problem solving.
Were we supposed to say our last name?
If you want.
Oh, I'm good then. Okay. Well, you did.
Yeah.
I did, because I'm Kyle Bacher.
You
And I'm Peter
yes,
Lawrence.
you
I
are.
own that. Yeah.
Yes, you are.
Problem solving. Why?
My radio name.
Because that's what I've been doing all week.
Kyle, how many problems do you solve in a week?
I cannot count. It's hard to determine because a lot of it's just little slack. Hey, do you know how I do this? And it's me sending them a little screenshot of something. I could probably go through all my sent emails and write a complete user manual for several of the products we use.
That nobody would read.
Yes.
Peter
Yeah, but at
knows.
least it would be there. It would be on demand, even
Have
though
you read the
there's-
document, page 12? You should have
No.
read page 12.
It's like, don't tell me to read the document. Just tell me what it says.
Right.
Yeah.
Summarize for me. Can you just give me 4 bullet points?
There has been occasions where, at a company I was at like 20 some years ago,
Uh-oh.
I had sent out detailed email instructions because we were doing an email migration, and the director of IT contacted me with a question, and the question had been answered like in the email.
Of course.
I go, oh, I can help you with that. You want to go down and click the Outlook link. All right. Now you want to go to the email that I sent, open that up. And now on that first line, you'll find your instructions right there.
There you go.
My raise wasn't that great that year. I don't know.
Oh.
But
So you
were
had a
so
different
efficient.
problem to solve.
Yeah, I was a young man doing tech support. Let's see. This week's big problem was, and I kicked myself in the head. It was someone couldn't connect to the internet via their Wi-Fi, and
Did you have them
they
blow
had
the
sent me a
dust off the plug?
message. They had sent me a message saying they rebooted their computer, and they restarted their Wi-Fi network.
Yeah.
And so we tried a whole bunch of stuff
Uh-huh.
for a good 45 minutes.
And then their cable modem got restarted?
And
Or
then
did you
I
just have to
said,
press?
can you restart your cable modem again? And that's when I learned they had never restarted their cable modem in the first place. And that's when I just shook my head. Because I read restarted our Wi-Fi network as being restarted our Wi-Fi router.
Right.
Sure.
That was
Is
my
this a service you
mistake.
provide? I can call you when my internet is flaky.
As long as you have unplugged your router, waited like 30 seconds, plugged it back in, restarted your computer, and it's not your home computer, then yes, you can call Peter anytime you want.
That's
Okay.
right.
This is actually a problem I have. Sometimes my daughter, if she gets mad at me, she will change our Wi-Fi password to emojis. And she knows I don't know
Okay.
how to do emojis. And so I'll have to ask her. It'll be like dragon, heart, eagle, pig.
Yeah.
Chad,
That's
here's the real question though. Why is your daughter managing your Wi-Fi network?
Oh, no. She's hacking it.
Oh, she's
Yeah.
hacking it.
She's hacking it.
Got it.
Well, she's kind of doing both. She runs the house.
Oh,
I live here at Her Majesty's pleasure.
gotcha.
I've heard that's how things are now, which is
Yeah.
well,
different than when we were
especially with
kids.
young ladies, yes.
Yeah, when we were just
Coming
luggage.
for you, Peter. It's coming for you.
Yeah,
Oh, no.
luggage
It's
and
here.
doers of chores. Yeah.
Kyle, I thought for sure you were going to say they didn't have their Wi-Fi on their laptop.
No, we checked all that stuff, and
That was the
Uh,
first 20 minutes.
that's the
Kyle,
first thing you do is always you check power and you restart things, and that's where you begin. That's like the default. We're gonna make sure it's not something got gummed up in the works.
Kyle, who was it?
can-
Let's name names.
Let's not.
I'm not
Okay.
gonna name
I
No name.
because it wasn't really her fault. She had, I mean,
Oh,
really,
a glimpse. A
she had
glimpse.
no idea. She didn't like.
It wasn't me.
I was
Yeah.
just gonna say.
She restarted her Wi-Fi network, which probably means she shut off her Wi-Fi on her computer and turned it back on. And she told me that.
It's just
No, this is me making an assumption because I misread something.
So step one, don't make assumptions when solving a
And
problem.
that's number one is like
Number one rule.
is going through and making sure you understand what they have told you.
Yeah, and that's,
Asking follow-up questions.
I mean, I find some of that tough to do. Like if you're just texting or slacking between people, you tend to not want to write out the 14 bullet list of have you done all of these things, right?
Right.
Right.
I mean, obviously you have a macro for it by now, but
Well, what should happen and how I usually do things is I typically will take them through all the steps again anyway.
sure, might as well.
Just to make sure I'm covering the bases. If someone said they just rebooted, I might say, well, let's shut down your computer, wait a couple seconds, and then let's turn it back on. So I'm not asking them to reboot again. Like, let's do the same thing you just did because for some reason I don't believe you. But let's do a hard reset because maybe that'll do it.
Yeah,
But really, it's like, no, I'm going to do this because I got to make sure this happened. And then we'll go on to the next thing. Go unplug your router from the wall. Wait, plug it back in.
Have you heard the blow the dust out of the plug story?
No.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, so one of the, I forget what it was, one of the companies, part of their customer service was, let's make sure there's no dust in the plug. So what I need you to do is unplug it from the wall, blow the dust out, and then plug it back in. And it's not that they needed to make sure that the dust was gone. It's that they needed to make sure that you unplugged it and plugged it back in.
Right.
That's pretty smart.
But they didn't ask you if you unplugged it already. They'd be like, no, I already did that. It's, well, you didn't blow the dust off the plug, right? So, well, no, who would do that?
Oh, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
it's the toughest. Well, it's tough being remote and trying to address hardware issues.
Yes.
Right.
Because that's something you would likely do is if you went to the house, you'd go back and just yank the plug anyway, plug it back in, go to the computer, reboot it, see if it works, and go, all right, looks like that was it.
That's parental troubleshooting.
Yeah. Now parental troubleshooting is this is your local IT guy. I talked to him. He's expecting your call because you're 4 hours away and I'm not driving up there.
You're passing them off to local IT people? That's such a great problem solve. I should do that myself.
Just sometimes it's like I can't just get in the car and drive for 4 hours every time this happens, and it happens frequently enough that
That's always step one for me. Is there somebody else that can solve this problem? Right? Like,
well, isn't delegation part of problem solving?
it is for me.
escalation. But passing the buck, that might solve your problem.
Whoa.
Having to deal with the problem.
Not passing the buck.
No, it's delegation. It's a different word.
Delegation.
Yeah, delegation is different than escalation.
It's a problem solving tactic.
That's right.
Escalation would be that this is a bigger problem than just this thing that I can deal with. I need someone's help that knows the back end of the system. I need a developer to look at code or logs or stuff like that. So calling me about the old website issues, that quickly got escalated to Chad.
Delegated.
Somebody that knew, not
Delegated.
really delegated. I'm not in
party.
a position to delegate tasks to people. There's really nobody that.
Well, there's begging.
There's no one that works for our company that is a person that I can just throw tasks at. No one works for me.
Well, you don't have to though. I mean, you can delegate up. It doesn't have to be, someone who reports to you.
Delegating is like a one-way. Like I'm giving you this to do. It's like it is a task assignment.
So
you can beg.
So you're saying difference between delegation and escalation is delegation is over. Escalation is moving it up the
Escalation
chain.
is more of a skills hierarchy
Okay.
or even ownership hierarchy, domain hierarchy. Like, this is not my thing to mess with.
Right.
I will redirect people. That's different than delegating. I'll say that's a customer computer, and as much as I'd like to work on it,
Yeah. Let me just reinstall Windows for you.
it wouldn't be appropriate for me to start monkeying with their registry on the customer's computer.
Right.
Yeah. No, escalation is we need somebody that's got stronger kung fu or that has the keys to the kingdom, whatever it is. I got to move this up the chain. And delegation is I'm going to have somebody else do this. Yeah.
So you could do it, but you're not going to because you just don't. It's not appropriate.
Right. Yeah.
Either because you don't want to or
you're getting awfully technical with your definitions.
Cabin lottery issues are escalated to Peter. Because he's the admin and the architect and the developer. He's the everything for the cabin system. Yes.
But home Wi-Fi issues are not.
Yeah.
Home Wi-Fi issues would be me begging Peter to help out with that. It wouldn't be delegating. It would be enlisting.
There you go. Enlisting.
Okay.
I like that one.
Enlisting.
Yeah. Peter, did you really design the cabin thing?
Did I design it? No. Did I take ownership of it? Yes, absolutely.
I thought you did all of it.
I got it to work when the person that worked on it stopped working on it. How about that?
Which happens in a company of consultants.
It does.
Company of volunteers. You can't escalate to the volunteers. You can only beg or enlist their
True
help.
story.
I'll edit that out.
True story.
COVID.
COVID.
So back to the problem solving piece, starting out the path of problem solving is like you're saying, blow the dust off, unplug, restart, make sure things are up to date.
There's a step before that, right? You have to verify that it's a problem.
Well, yeah, that's the key. Like, identifying what actually is the problem.
My screen is black and I can't see anything on it. Well, is it?
Right.
Can you not see anything because the room is dark also? Because maybe you have a power problem.
Well, that's true. I had a case where my computer won't turn on, and I keep pushing the power button and nothing happens.
Yep.
And so I went to that person's office, and I said, "Move. Let me give me your chair." He was the CEO at the time.
You said, "Allow me to help you."
No, I think I said, "Move."
This is another company, right?
Yeah, this is another company, a much larger company. So I said, no, he showed me, he goes, "Yeah, I've been trying to turn this on." So I went over and I said, well, this is your monitor. And this down here, this is actually your computer down here. And he just kind of shook his head, turned red in shame. And I said, I will never tell anybody
except for everybody
that you did this.
Except,
and I'm not naming names.
No names.
No names. No names.
Yeah. But
that's identifying the problem, right? The problem wasn't that his computer wouldn't turn on. The problem was that he wasn't turning his computer on.
Right. Yeah. And the same can be said for like people that don't turn their monitor on, or then there's the embarrassed person that lies to save face. There was the occasion where someone said my monitor stopped working.
Okay.
And I went over to look at it.
Uh-huh.
And I pulled it back from the wall a little bit and noticed the puddle, and immediately unplugged it, turned it upside down and set it on the floor.
Technically, it did stop working.
And I looked at her and I said, "You watered your monitor, didn't you?" And she said, "Yeah, I did." That explains for the plant.
I can empathize with that person because, like, every once in a while, I will massage the facts. For example, a few weeks ago, I was at a bar, and somebody forced me to drink like a lot of grain belt, right? And I told my wife, yeah. And I told my wife, like, "Hey, I have a problem. Can you come grab me?" And she said, "What happened?" I'm like, "Well, they made me drink all this beer."
Right.
And listen, I couldn't. It wasn't my fault.
You're only so strong.
Yes, I am. Yeah. And she said, "Okay, thank you for
It wasn't
calling."
me.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
I've had
that's a problem solved,
my
right?
car won't start. Can you come pick me up?
Oh, that's nice.
And then like the person had been forced to drink way too much grain belt or something.
right.
And their car didn't start because they didn't try.
Yep.
When I look at like pretending you don't know what happened to your monitor because you watered it. I don't have any ill will toward that person. It didn't make me angry. It made me think, yeah, I get it. Because that's embarrassing. And it's a $1,200 17-inch marketing monitor that weighed about 6 tons, and it was about 2 months old.
So wait, what happened? They spilled their drink on their monitor.
Yeah, they watered the plant that was on the corner of the cubicle. Above the monitor.
All right.
And it dripped onto the monitor.
And they give it a little extra water to grow.
Yeah. I've had people like spill an entire bowl of oatmeal on their keyboard, and stuff happens. That person did not lie though about what happened.
Well, it's kind of hard to lie about oatmeal on your keyboard.
Well, it depends on how much you clean it up before you call Kyle.
Okay.
Yeah. But stuff like that's pretty simple to figure out what happened, and actually letting that monitor just sit overnight. It dried out.
Rice?
We plugged it in the next day. Didn't even know about the rice trick.
Right. It didn't need rice. It's Minnesota in the winter.
Yeah. Exactly. And it dried out and it was fine.
Those are very tactical approaches to problem solving. I have, for my client, an enormous heap of problems to solve, right? Like right now. And we are in the process of figuring out how we're going to solve probably, 36 different problems of varying sizes.
Sure.
And the approach to this is a little different than the young lady that spilled water on her monitor. This is an entirely different set of problems. So while I've done that before, well, not that specifically, but I dealt with those types of issues. Yeah. The same general skill set applies. And my approach is relatively simplistic because I'm kind of a dope. But step one is take all of the emotion and all of the opinions and stick to the facts of whatever problem you're dealing with, right? Like that's a big thing for me, because it's very especially with what we do. And Peter, you've got your own clients, and Claire, you've got your own problems, but like we all have like these as consultants, we've got this very distinct skill set, and applying our experience and everything that we know to these things is a little different. And it's outside of sticking to facts and capabilities. It for me is really just, I don't have like a cookie cutter approach aside from strip out all of the nonsense and all of the opinions. And what is it? Is it the Sherlock Holmes thing, the 7% solution?
Take away everything that doesn't make
Yeah.
sense and the one
Yeah. Yeah.
remaining does?
Well, I think that's Occam's razor, but that
Yeah.
is essentially the same idea. And for us as
Well,
consultants,
you're basically distilling it down to the actual problem. And then, problems might have sub problems. So it's like, what's the lowest problem denominator that we can boil this down to that we can address?
That's actually kind of the general approach is, we are given, huge projects, and then break it down into the smallest atomic piece that you can, and then rebuild from there on up, right? Like how the problem becomes how to take a huge problem and chunk it out into these little tiny bits that you can actually sink your teeth into and do something to, right? And not necessarily solve everything all at once.
And still put them together in a orderly fashion, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't just solve a whole bunch of problems and then throw it all in a bin and say, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, no,
You don't build the Death Star by just like saying, okay, now we're going to build the Death Star. You
That's
build
right.
the exhaust port first, and you design the entire system around that so somebody can blow it up for you it
was only 2 meters wide. Come on.
yeah.
well, I mean, in that example, you've got to consider the dependencies between the problems, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of leads to making sure you don't cause a problem with a solution.
Hippocratic oath. That's the one. I've been saying that a lot.
Do no harm.
Yeah, at the very worst, don't make it worse, right? Like whatever you're doing, don't make it worse than it already is, right? Like being very general with what I'm doing right now, we're doing a big replacement, right? Old thing, we're going to put a new thing that does that but better. And our problem is the old thing is incredibly complex, and it's huge
And embedded.
And so whatever the new thing is can't be worse than that, right? It has to be at least that, hopefully better. Hopefully we've all done our job well, and we've decomposed and reconstructed the problems up and down the chain in such a way that new thing is not only new and shiny and pretty, but better.
Right.
And if I've done my job well, there is an infinite amount of dad jokes sprinkled throughout the source code. So far, I'm on the right path, but.
So here's a question for you guys, though. I mean, you're consultants. That's got to be pretty hard to do when you're not. You have to probably get yourself up to speed on all of the things and all of the stuff in order to figure that stuff out, because you don't necessarily have history. Let's say you've only been there because you were just assigned there a couple of months ago. I mean, you're talking about things that could have years worth of implications and decisions and all of that kind of stuff. So, how do you do that?
I'd say that's one of the biggest challenges when you walk through the door is, how do I get my head around this? How am I going to understand all of the moving parts, all the dependencies, what better is, how people work with it, how they need to work with it, the impact it has on their job. There's some, like, the priority of things, who's your there's always that one role or that's kind of your primary target for success. If one person needs to benefit from this, what's that most important person, that most important role that's going to win in a fight? Like if we have to do something that's going to favor this role over this role, who's going to win in that argument? Because sometimes you're not designing something that's going to be used by just one group of people, but it's used across the board and it's used differently. Like there's people that have to get content into a system, and there's people that have to consume the content. And those are different roles and different ways of interacting with the system. So it's like, what's more important? Is it more important to serve the people that have to put the stuff in? So maybe your user experience isn't going to be that as good as it could be if you could get the people that put stuff in to take on way more work to get it in there? Or is it, if we can get these people to use this at all, it's going to be a win. Even though the result isn't going to be pretty, it's still going to be better. Right. But to have that understanding, you're really relying on identifying the key people that have that information, the key people that are in those roles, and then building a case for involving those people. I don't want to monopolize the conversation, but just to tag onto that, one of the challenges I found that I didn't really even think that would be a problem, is how difficult it is to involve people in the project that need to be involved in the project. You don't always have access to people. You don't walk in the door having access to people. You can't just set up meetings with certain people, or they just don't have any time, literally no time for you. But they're key people that you still have to hear from, that are still going to need to be involved in some way. So that's also a challenge.
Peter, when we're building software like from the ground up, right, or doing lift and shift or whatever, we've got, as developers, as we write a lot of code, and for us, it's easy for us when we see a technical challenge to empathize with the guy that probably wrote it in the first place.
Of course.
And fingers crossed, it was a relatively smart guy, even if, working with outdated systems or outdated technology. But in our roles, we have certain patterns that even though we might come into a gig as not necessarily domain experts in whatever problem we're fixing,
right,
the technology stack probably followed certain best practices, certain patterns that we can recognize even a decade or 2 decades later, right?
Right. And even though the patterns may have changed, you can at least see the pattern, right? Even if design patterns that were 20 years old may not be what we're using today, but at least you can go, oh, I recognize that. I can make that work.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of the designers that came behind my projects, they now know what bad CSS looks like. Do you need the same rule in 3 different places because you forgot you put it in? Who knows? Comments would be nice. All I'm saying is just one comment somewhere.
Comments welcome.
But I think like part of, and this might apply to my current assignment, but in general, empathizing with the guy that was in my shoes before I got there, like just understanding, even if you think it's an absolutely chaotic solution.
And there's 2 cases for that, right? One is the person is gone. Okay, I can empathize with them, but I can't actually ask them what was going on. In some cases, you can see code and you'd be like, this code looks interesting. Tell me the story of this code. Yeah. And I will tell you, well, it started out very simply, and then I had to change it 47 different times because the business kept changing their mind. And every time they did, we added a little bit more and a little bit more. And then we had a giant plate full of spaghetti. And we said, well, it's working spaghetti. We could straighten all the noodles out and maybe end up with the same answer, but we're not sure and we don't have time. So we're going to leave it. And then Chad gets to come back and say, I see the spaghetti. I know the spaghetti. I have time now. I will fix the spaghetti.
Yeah, you don't know that that person that was there before you didn't train those people on how to come up with their final list of requirements through this iterative approach week after week after week and struggled with that. And now when you come in, that's all been clearly defined. But it took so long to get there and so many versions of it that they end up building Frankenstein's monster. And then you come in and look at and be like, this does not look good. This is not, this is Frankenstein.
Why is this hand over here? It
Yeah.
should be over on this right hand. And
Why
not
does
the
his right hand so much larger than his left hand?
What are the bolts in the neck for? Like, that's
Right.
the thing that I never.
You know, those bolts
To
are,
hold
you
his
don't
head
really
on.
need those bolts. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, you don't know that that's the best that person could do with the information they had. And that's the business people
Right.
not really understanding how to hand over their requirements to a developer, or how to define their problem correctly, or how much work they'd have to do to understand what they wanted. A lot of stuff you think of on the way.
Right.
And they learn what the thing can do
Right.
along the way.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's important to me now that I see what it is. I don't want that. I want this other thing now.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'll just throw that switch that changes it.
So I think it's interesting. I mean, obviously, it's pretty obvious. Let me be very redundant. I mean, the way to get to the problem. I mean, everything you guys are talking about is to ask a lot of questions, right?
Right.
But to Chad's point too, and I think this is an art form, especially for consultants. And I'm shifting roles, but coming from HR and dealing with people. Chad, your comment about you got to take the emotion out of it. So that's fine and well if it's just you have to worry about. But what happens when that developer is still there and you have to go question them about the code that they wrote? I mean, how do you can't rely on them having the same view on the situation and taking the emotion out. So, I mean, I guess I'm asking you guys questions because as consultants, that's an art form.
Well, and you just want to be humble, right? You go into it with humility and say, this code looks very, very unusual. I'm sure there's a story behind it. Can you tell me the story? And would you write it this exact same way today? I don't know any developers of the three of us that would point at their code from last year and say, this is the prime example of brilliance. I would never change this ever, ever, ever. This is perfect.
Chad
said no developer ever.
Chad's written perfect code.
That is not written perfect code. He's just thinking about, well, maybe there was that one, but I don't, that was following along that one, Apple line where I had so much, I wasn't sure how the code worked, but it worked really well. So
there is a definite, aside from our technical skills, and I think we've said this before on a different podcast, it is a combination of skill sets, right? Technical, but also just being able to communicate to people and approaching, like what Peter said, approaching because maybe the original developers are there, maybe they've moved on, maybe they're in different roles, whatever, but being able to understand personalities fast is a huge part of what we do, right? I've got guys right now, that will tell me, they swear back and forth with me on different things. They're like, oh yeah, I did this a while ago, and the language is colorful. And I'm like, okay, that's how that guy communicates. Learning how to communicate with different people in different places, not only different places in the company, but different places in their own career, right? Like maybe you're replacing something that a guy wrote when he was a junior developer fresh out of college.
Right.
And, that gets back to just empathize with the guy with the problem and with the people that solved it initially. And this is specific to me doing what I'm doing today at my current client, but anything, you do have to take the emotion out of it to understand the problem completely and get down to the bare facts. But also for us specifically as consultants, the ability to communicate and empathize and all of that stuff just makes us a little bit better than if we were just to go in, if we were to go at a thing like an old school Unix system admin, right? I'm thinking of the guy with the beard and the, Richard Stallman types.
We do it that way because we've always done it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. It works because that's how it's supposed to work. And there will be no discussion otherwise.
Right.
So yeah, the soft skills matter for us, at least for me. Mm-hmm. The soft skills have carried me almost as far as the tech skills, which is easy for me to say because I have zero tech skills. Don't tell anybody. But
well, I think that businesses have changed and the role of IT has changed. The role of IT now is more of a service role, in service to the organization and in service to the business, and it's driven by the business. And where it kind of used to be this sort of a IT is the master of the IT domain.
We deliver solutions, whether
We're
you
going
want them
to
or
give
not.
you what you need. We'll
And we're going to
decide
give you
what
what
you
we think
need.
you need. We are
Yeah.
going to give you what we think you need.
Right.
Right. We're going to decide what you need and then give it to you, and then wonder why it's not working for you and why you're complaining about it,
Why aren't you
and
using that?
and then blame you if something goes wrong.
Yeah.
That's the old days. Kevin, Ivory Tower, and we've made pretty much. I don't know if we've completely transitioned out of that, in across all businesses in general. But I know when I've gone into an organization and IT has a really bad reputation, and I'll be doing like interviews with people, and we'll be running surveys and stuff. And then the other side, there's a kind of a grumbling about the business, and it's sort of like they're at odds with each other. Then I kind of get in the role where I defend the other to the other. So when I'm working with the IT people and the user bashing and business bashing starts, then I'm like defending the users and the business and kind of explaining why that's happening and how it's impacting their job, and to try to make them understand. And then when I'm dealing with the business users and they're doing the IT bashing, then I'm telling them how challenging it is for IT, and how, it's kind of defending IT to them to try to smooth things out. Because a lot of times you get into a kind of a sick environment where it's like there's this huge backlog of tickets, and people feel like the IT is the black hole of requests and stuff. And it's kind of hard to break that. But it can be done.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think, those opinions build up over time with different things happening in ways that they didn't want to happen, right? So
Yeah.
I have this problem. Can you solve it? Oh, yeah, sure. Wait, you didn't solve the problem that I gave you. You solved the problem that you wanted to solve. Let's try this again. And those kinds of things that's where being a consultant coming in and being like fresh eyes, fresh ears. Hey, let's get rid of all the 20 years of history that you guys have with each other, and let's just solve this problem, and let's break it down and make sure that we're all on the same page. And it's never going to be sitting around the campfire singing Kumbaya or anything like that, but you can certainly get better.
That was also, we talked about this a while ago, like that's also kind of a consultant superpower. You can come into a problem with this dopey enthusiasm, right? Like this wide-eyed dopey enthusiasm, and ask the kind of basic dumb questions that maybe everybody built a thing based on a lot of assumptions. And then we come in and we ask these dopey questions. We're like, hey, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. Can you explain it? And the process of talking about the problem. And this is a service I provide for everybody on in my team. I'm the default rubber duck, right? So as they talk through a problem, somebody will hit me up and say, hey, I can't figure this out. I don't know what the heck the solution is. But as they talk through the problem and I ask a couple of dopey questions, that is super, super valuable, right? Just speaking through things. I can talk to a guy be talked at for a half hour and listen to the guy come to his own conclusion without me saying a word except, that's weird, right? Like, that's usually all I have to say. Is, that sounds weird. Yeah.
It's just letting people verbally process. I'm a verbal processor. So if I have to work through a problem, and I just had to do this morning, where I was desperately trying to find someone to go, okay, I have to talk this through with someone because I need to know if I'm actually insane or if I need some affirmation that I'm on the right track. And that is that is, and the conversation you're talking about, Chad, I mean, as a CM here at SDG, I've had that conversation with countless consultants, just reminding them that you can play this role. You can play the, hey, I'm new card.
Right.
I'm just trying to get my arms around this and figure out what it is we're supposed to be doing here. So to your point, that's a great position to be in as a consultant, and providing that really objective line of questioning that gets even the people who've been there a while to think about it a little bit differently.
Yeah.
I agree. It's a superpower.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Not knowing, oh, I shouldn't talk to this guy or shouldn't talk to that guy, like that. That's the same kind of little kind of almost horse blinders, right? We're like, oh, here's the problem. Here's the people that know about the problem. I'm going to schedule a meeting with all these people,
Right.
and not give a crap about, oh, I shouldn't be talking to this guy. This guy is
Right.
too high up here or too high up here. I'm like, well, let's see
Nope.
what happens. And
No,
usually
nobody
what
told me, and
happens-
I don't have to
Yep.
know that, right?
Just
Yeah.
trying to get the decision makers in the room, right?
Yeah, we've been doing a ton of that at our client, and it's worked out beautifully. Like, I'm absolutely delighted. And really all it is asking, softball, pitching a couple of really dopey questions, listening to them talk it through, and then asking all of the really stupid questions and getting to all the atomic problems that are the actual problems, so that
Right.
you can reassemble a Death Star.
So,
Yeah.
Chad, are you really solving problems, or are you facilitating the ability of others to solve problems?
I am a therapist mostly, and
I get that.
it is, well, I think it's a little column A, a little column B. I mean, we're really we have a thing to do, right? But all of the problems, gaining the understanding, the basis of the problem, is our problem right now. Like, just our biggest problem is, let's just make sure we understand and we've looked at this thing from all angles.
Right.
And then, when you're, maybe you're replacing something that's very, very old, right?
Well, and nobody wants
huh?
nobody wants you to come in and replace it with the exact same thing, just written in newer software, right?
Yeah.
Like, nobody says, "Oh, this is the best widget ever. Make us this exact same widget
Yeah.
that we're currently using."
Don't make it worse.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
Hippocratic oath.
No, but
Yeah.
try to make it better, right?
Yeah.
Try to understand what it needs to be the right widget.
Yeah, lift and shift is a C- if you're giving it a letter grade, right? Like,
Yeah.
that is the least you
Right.
should be doing ever,
Right.
and
Yep.
following the Hippocratic oath. Even if you're taking old technology and putting it in whatever modern cool framework the kids are using these days, that's still a C-, right? Like, you're not.
Right.
There's value there. Maybe you're extending it. Maybe you're opening it up to fresh possibilities with integrations, whatever. But still, it's not really a win.
It might be a
Right.
C. Yeah.
I'm a C-. Yeah. I like to set the bar higher. I'm a letter grade grading on a, what is it? Grading on a curve.
Curve.
I grade on a curve. Yeah.
Right.
So.
Yeah. If you can make it better, like, the best time to make it better is while you're doing it. It's like, you're not going to come back and, it's like the lift and shift. It's like, while you're lifting and shifting, we can make these enhancements. We can make these improvements. This is the best time to do it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Not, let's just bring over what we got and fix it later. It's like, well, that's a lot of the stuff you could have fixed in the old place and didn't either.
Right. Nobody moves
so-
a house by taking up the foundation and the entire house and moving it across town.
Yeah.
They build a new foundation and move the old house onto it.
Your
Yeah.
truck's on the lift. Replace the
analogy.
muffler while it's up there. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that, Claire, to your point, in a lot of cases, you are almost there making the connections between the people so that they can communicate with each other. You're asking the questions to get them thinking in the right direction, or to get them answering so they can react to one another's answers.
And have both
And-
people answer the same question with
Yeah.
the same answer, right?
Mhm.
Getting to
Yeah.
that one answer instead of two slightly different answers.
We have to get to this kind of equilibrium of understanding between all of the people involved. And so they kind of share the same roadmap, and know the way forward. Otherwise, they're going to be pulling each other in different directions, or, like having decision makers in the room. At some point things need to be paid for. There needs to be budget, stuff like that. Getting their buy-in right away, making them part of it. That's the other thing is ownership, giving people a sense of ownership, being involved in the project, being involved in the problem, helping identify the problem, getting their 2 cents in, being heard, and then kind of accepting what the solution will be. It's like, is this your card? Is this going to work for you? If we do this for you, is this going to solve all your problems? And then it's, yes, okay, that's what we're going to do. And then when it gets launched and somebody complains about something, then it's that person next to him that was involved in the project that can say, oh, no, that came up and we did it this other way. We decided that we wanted it this way.
Right.
And they can kind of help defend it. Otherwise, you're just kind of the target for all the blame and stuff.
And sometimes that works out well too, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
You're the target. You'll take the blame and be like, yeah, but they'll switch their process and fit it into the new process, right?
Yeah, that's actually I've taken a chunk of that, right? Just being the lightning rod for whatever, right? Sometimes you need a guy that is that, so that the other people,
the human shield.
Yeah, like maybe a human shield, or maybe a whatever it is, a filter, a something, but being that, so that all of the negativity, if you can handle it, is centered in one spot, and then everybody else is just calm waters, smooth sailing, and everything. Yeah. So if you actually have the capacity to absorb a lot of that stuff, and I tend to, because grain belt exists, I can handle it. It's actually super. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question about that.
Yes.
But we can come back. Finish your thought. I'll ask my question.
I already lost it.
I'm sorry.
No,
we're talking about being a lightning rod for all of that stuff. If you have the capacity.
Yeah, if you can handle some of that stuff, and you do kind of absorb some, I don't know, it's I don't want to say negative attitudes and everything else, but if you can massage that for your group, for your team, for your problem, there's benefit to that for a lot of folks and for the project, right? Because we've dealt with people that are rough around the edges, or not fun to deal with, and it's tense. And knowing that you don't have to deal with that for some folks makes you better in your other area.
You're mitigating potential problems that, personality conflicts or whatever by doing that, Chad, right? Like you're mitigating some other potential problems.
It's a lot of that. So like our role is tech, it's therapist a lot of times, and it's just like I'll say it again, the soft skills are so much more valuable sometimes for our roles. You have to have at least 1 or 2 guys that have a set of those skills to be able to have an effective team.
Well, problems can cause pain and suffering and frustration. And when you walk into a place that's having problems that need to be solved, you can be walking into kind of a negative environment. If you're dealing with a user having computer issues and they can't get their work done and they have a deadline and they're fighting with that system all day, they're not a happy person. And so I find that, the first problem I'm solving is to make them feel some reassurance, talk them down from the ledge, as it were, let them know that they're not stupid. Because you hear that a lot. Oh, I'm such an idiot. What's happening here? Just the frustration. Yeah, we'll get you taken care of. Don't worry about it. No, you're fine. It's not a big deal. Or they're worried they're bothering you, taking up your valuable time. No, I'm fine. I'm good. I got plenty of time.
I gotta write that down. So when Kyle tells me that he's fine. I'll take care of it. Really,
Yeah.
I'm being a problem, but he's taking care of it for me.
I might have dropped 5 things. I might be pushing my work down the road, but that's, it's like I'm going to take that time to fix that problem and get my, in my role, my number one priority is to keep people working.
Right.
To keep everybody up and running and make sure they got the stuff they need to do what they do, and remove technology as an obstacle. It needs to be helping them, not hurting them. So I drop everything to keep people working. If it's something that isn't keeping them, if it's some nice to have, I don't just like sacrifice myself on the altar of others on every occasion. Because you can't really do that. And sometimes people will become dependent on you and you become their Google. And that's not good either. Like, people do need to be able to figure some things out for themselves, some basic things. And I find a lot of times if you just wait 15 minutes before you get back to somebody, 5 minutes later, you get the follow-up Slack that says I figured it out. Or right. I found it. When I had a new tech at a previous job, when I did tech support, I had a new tech come on board. I had a lackey, and so I would give him stuff to do, and he would ask me questions, and I'd give him answers, and then after a few weeks, I said, "Okay, now you have to Google for 15 minutes before you come ask me about it." If you, because I had become Google.
Right. It's way easier to just ask.
I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure he's used that 15-minute trick on me. I'm 100% certain.
I'll let Claire go for hours.
No,
she'll get there. She'll eventually figure it out. But again, that's solving a problem of, it's like people can get a better response, like if they can find out for themselves.
They can learn it, right?
If they can learn how to figure it out, if they can learn where to go to get that information, or even know to do that, even know to take a crack at it on their own. Some people are paralyzed by technology, though. There's just some folks that they just get so frustrated and they're averse to doing that sort of stuff. So you kind of have to understand who you're dealing with.
I clicked wrong once and I deleted my whole document. I'm never doing that again.
Right.
Definitely might be a topic for another time, but is there an erosion in critical thinking, because it is so easy just to reach out to someone else?
Well, I think you can form dependencies on people.
Mm-hmm.
And I can just I could learn to untie these knots, but I have a Boy Scout sitting next to me and you just pass them over.
Is that delegation or escalation?
It's like unwanted delegation, unwelcome delegation. Let me make my problems your problems.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing with problem solving is taking ownership of the problem.
Yes.
Okay, am I going to make your problem my problem? And you need that kind of handshake. In the restaurant business, we had a rule: you hear it, you own it, which means that you don't just send them to someone else. Someone comes to you and says, I need a side of ranch. You go get it, or you go and tell the server, and then you check back and make sure the server did it.
Right.
You make sure it all happened, because
own it to the solution, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Which
I think
is a lot of things that you have to do, even in IT, right? Or in consulting, is just because you heard it and you wrote it down doesn't mean that it gets done. You have to follow through and make sure that it gets done.
Yeah, follow through, follow up are hugely important. Even when you solve something for somebody, like you fix it for them, checking with them later on. Hey, is that still working for you? No, it happened again, but I wasn't going to bug you till next week because I got sick of working on this, or I felt bad for taking your time.
I wanted to let the anger build.
Some people will live with problems that they don't have to live with because they're afraid to ask for help solving them. When I was on site, I would always walk the floor, just walk around the building, because someone's going to flag you down. Someone is dealing with something and they're going to see you and go, oh, hey, by the way, this is happening. Can you fix it for me? The idea is to take care of the problems.
Yeah.
That's the goal. It's not make it so everybody doesn't bother you. That's not the goal. The goal is solve all the problems.
Right. Make them all go away.
Claire, what was your follow-up? I missed it.
No, I didn't ask it yet. I need to know if you are an influencer on Instagram for Grain Belt. That's my question.
It has been suggested a couple of times. So last time
by Grain Belt?
Well, I made all my stuff private, so I can't necessarily be yet. But last time they changed their label, they let me know ahead of time, because when they did it 6 years ago, we almost, we had a change.org petition, the whole 9 yards to get it back because it didn't need to happen. This time I was livid, and they just prepared me for that. So to a degree, yes, I'm not an influencer. That's kind of gross, but
you're heavily invested in the brand.
I am heavily, I'm a huge fan of the brand and the idea and the beverage. And
it seems like,
I'm glad you like the product. Like, that's good too.
Well, I got to, so here's a fun Grain Belt story. Here's my wife and I, we were at a bar. It was Betty Danger's bar in Northeast Minneapolis.
Yep.
And the woman that owns Betty Danger's also owns Psycho Susie's.
Yep.
And turns out we were sitting right next to the woman, and she's like, "Oh, how come
is she Betty Danger or is she Psycho Susie? Which
No,
one?
You'll never know.
She's Leslie Bach. Little bit of column A, little bit of column B, all in one person." And we got to talking, and I'm like, "Yeah, I usually go to the 1029 bar. That's where I have all my drinks." And she said, "Why don't you ever come to my bars? Like, why do you have your happy hours there all the time?" I'm like, "Well, lots of reasons. My buddies are there. I know all the people. I know all the bartenders. But the biggest problem is you don't serve Grain Belt." And so she goes, "Oh, well, keep an eye out." And then 3 weeks later, on her billboard, she said, she put up there, "Now serving Grain Belt Premium. Thank Chad." And I've got a little picture. Yeah, I got a picture of it. And so
you are an influencer.
I am. Well,
Just
that
an
is
official one.
that was a problem, and that was a small microcosm of how we approach problems in the real, like, hey, here's the problem, you don't serve this. And then she fixed it, and I'll send the picture to the pod, the Slack channel. That was fun.
That's cool. That's a cool story.
It was a story.
I think it's a cool
All right.
story. I've never influenced anything like that, so.
And with that influential tale, I think we'll call it. That's a bad joke. I'm cutting that out.
No, leave it. You cannot take out the bad jokes that you don't agree with. Maybe somebody else will chuckle.
Whatever happens in the pot stays in the pot.
I'm the one that edits. I'm the decider.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, he's got the super. He's yeah.
All right.
All right. That was the SDG podcast. If you want to drop us a line, shoot us an email at thepodcasters@solutiondesign.com. Until next time, say goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, everyone.